Okay, so I'm going to work some of the problems from your Module 3 test review. You need to make sure that you are mastering those objectives and that you also work through this Module 3 test review in ALEX. You will have to take your Module 3 test this Tuesday and coming up Tuesday in class if you have not already taken it. So number 1 says factor, and we're given 9y plus 18. And so the only type of factoring that I can do with this problem is to factor out a GCF, and I know that 9 will go into both 9 and 18, so my GCF here is simply 9. So now if I have two terms here, I should have two terms in this parentheses, and so 9 times what would give me 9y, and that would simply be y, plus 9 times what would give me 18, and that would be 2. And so now I have factored it. 9 times y plus 2 would be my final answer. Okay, so now we're going to skip to question number number 3. And it says to factor, and it gives us 6y squared plus 9y cubed. Okay? So once again, the only type of factoring I can do here is GCF. And for 6 and 9, I know the largest thing that will divide evenly into both of those is 3. And then for y squared and y cubed, on the variables, I always go with the one that's the lowest power. Since they both have y, then I can factor out y, but how much? Well, the lowest power of y, so that would be y squared. Once again, I have two terms here, so I should have two terms in here. So I ask myself, 3y squared times what would give me 6y squared here, and that would simply be 2. Plus 3y squared times what would give me 9y cubed. Well, I know 3 times 3 is 9, and y squared times y is going to give me back that y cubed. And so I have factored it. 3y squared times 2 plus 3y. Okay, if we look at number 5, we're still factoring. And so for number 5, we have factor the following expression, and we are given, so here's the problem, factor the following expression, and we're given 18 v(w) to the 7th y squared minus 24 v to the 4th w to the 9th. Okay. And so once again, the type of factoring that I'm going to be doing here is GCF factoring. And so for 18 and 24, I need to think of the largest thing that will divide evenly into both 18 and 24, and that would be 6. Now, both of these terms have v, and so again, I go with the lowest power of v, which would be this v to the first, or just v. Both terms have w, and so again, I go with the lowest power of w, which is w to the 7th. But both terms do not have y, so I cannot factor out y as part of the GCF. So now if I have two terms here, I should have two terms in here. And so I ask myself, 6 times what gives me 18, and that would be 3. I already have v, that's what I need, so I don't need any v here. I have w to the 7th, that's what I need, so I don't need any w here. But I need this y squared, so I'm going to put it here with the 3. Because if I multiply back 6vw to the 7th times 3y squared, that would give me 18vw to the 7th y squared. Minus, now 6 times 4 would give me 24. This is really v to the first, so v to the first times v to the third would give me v to the 4th. And then finally, w to the 7th times w to the 2nd would give me back that w to the 9th. And there I have factored that problem. Okay? So, on the next page, we're still factoring. Number 7 says rewrite the expression by factoring out x plus 4. So they even tell you on number 7 what to factor out. So number 7, we have 3x squared times x plus 4 minus 7 times x plus 4. And it tells you in the instructions to factor out x plus 4. So if I factor out this x plus 4 and pull it here to the front, times, well, I have 3x squared left here, so that would go in here, and I have minus 7. If I factor out here, I have minus 7 left there. So this would be my final factored answer for that problem. Okay, so for number 9, we're still factoring, and now we're getting into factoring a trinomial, and it says factor y squared minus 10y plus 16. And so I'm going to factor this, and it's going to factor to a binomial times another binomial, and I start with my first term, y squared, and I factor that. Well, that would factor to y times y would give me back y squared. Then we skip to our last term, and we look at the sign. If the last term, the last sign is positive, then that tells me my signs in here will be the same, and they will both be the same as whatever my middle term is. So that means they should both be minus. Now I work on factoring 16, and I always start 1 times 16, 2 times 8, 4 times 4. And I need to pick the pair of numbers here that, since signs are going to be the same, would add to give me this middle term. And so that would have to be the 2 and the 8. And so this factors to y minus 2 times y minus 8. Okay, so we're still factoring on number 12. So on number 12 on the review, it says factor x squared plus xy minus 20y squared. Okay? I cannot factor out an x because this last term does not have x, and I cannot factor out a y because this first term does not have y. So this is going to be factored very similar to the way we did number 9. I'm going to start with my first term. X squared is x times x. My last term is negative, so that tells me my signs in here should be different when I get done. And I'm going to go ahead, since I have this y squared, and so I don't forget it, I'm going to go ahead and put the y times y for this y squared in my parentheses. Now I'm going to work on factoring this 20. 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. And so now I look at all of my choices, and I need the pair that will subtract. And how do I know I'm going to subtract them? Well, because my signs are different in here. That will subtract to give me this middle term, which is really 1xy. Well, that would have to be 5 and the 4. I could subtract 5 minus 4 and get this 1 if I make the higher number positive and the lower number negative. So 5 here, 4 here. So this would be my final factored answer. And so if I check this one, just to show you why it works this way, remember you can check all of your factoring like this by using FOIL. First times first, x times x is x squared, outer times outer, x times negative 4y is minus 4xy, inner times inner, 5y times x is plus 5xy, and last times last. Positive 5y times negative 4y would be negative 20y squared. And when I combine these two middle terms, I get positive 1xy minus 20y squared. So I know it checks, so this would be the correct final answer. Okay, so now let's move on to the next problem on the review, and that's number 13. And number 13 says factor completely. So when it says this word completely, that should be a hint to you that you're probably going to have to do 2 steps on this. And the 2 steps usually will be that you have to first factor out a GCF, and then step 2 is you'll have to keep factoring. So kind of be looking for that in your instructions on your test. When it says factor completely, you then are going to be looking probably to factor out a GCF first and then to keep on factoring. So on 13, factor completely. And the problem was 3w squared plus 3w minus 90. And again, that completely word should catch your attention. So I see that I can factor out a 3 out of all three of these terms. So I'm going to start there. And again, when you're factoring out a GCF, if I have 3 terms here, then I must have 3 terms in here. So 3 times w squared would give me 3w squared, plus 3 times w would give me 3w, minus 3 times 30 would give me 90. But here's the important part. We must keep factoring now. So I still bring down this 3 that I factored out, that GCF is going to be part of my final answer. And now I focus on this trinomial, w squared plus w minus 30, and I factor that. So w squared would factor to w times w. I go to my last term and I see that it's negative, so that again tells me my signs are going to be different in here. And I factor 30. Well, we could do 1 times 30, we could do 2 times 15, we could do 3 times 10, we could do 5 times 6. But I need the pair that will subtract, and again I know I'm subtracting because signs are different in here, that would subtract to give me this positive 1w in the middle. And so that would have to be my 5 times 6. And I want the higher number positive, since I want a positive 1, and the lower number negative. So a 6 here, a 5 here. And so you have to put all of this in, including this 3, in your final answer here when you factor 1 like this. Okay, so the next problem we're going to look at on the review is number 14, and it says factor 3y squared minus 4y minus 7. And I'm going to show you 2 ways to do this problem. Now there's no GCF I can factor out. And so the guess and check method would be to simply start the same way you start all your other trinomial factoring and start with your first term. 3y squared would factor to 3y times y. Then you skip to your last term and you see that it's negative, so I know my signs are going to be different. I'm going to wait and put them at the end because when you have another coefficient here involved, like this 3, then you kind of have to wait till the end to check out what your outer product and your inner product are going to be to give you this. So we're going to wait and put our different signs in at the end. But then I factor 7. Well, there's only one way to do that. That's 1 times 7. Well, if I put my 7 here and my 1 here, then I have to multiply my outer times outer and see what I get. That's 21y. I have to multiply my inner times inner. Well, that's 1y, to see if that will possibly give me my middle term, negative 4y. Well, there is no way that 21 and 1, if I subtract, and again I know I'm subtracting because my signs are going to be different, that's going to give me negative 4y. So that's why this is called guess and check method. I start back over, and I start again with 3y squared would have to be 3y times y. My last term is negative, signs are going to be different. I have to use 1 times 7, but instead of putting the 1 here and the 7 here, I'm going to switch it and put the 7 here and the 1 here. And so now if I do outer times outer, 3y times 1 is 3y. If I do inner times inner, 7y times y is 7y. Can I subtract those and get this middle term, negative 4y? And the answer is yes, if I make the 3y positive and the 7y negative. So I know I need to put my minus sign in that one and my plus sign in this one. And so this would be the final answer. Now, alternative method to doing that same problem is called bottoms-up factoring. So I'm going to rework 14 using that same problem, 3y squared minus 4y minus 7, but I'm going to use a different technique. If you don't like guess and check, this might be better for you. So on bottoms up, we would start by taking this 3 that's here in the front, and you can think of it as moving it to the end and multiplying it times this last term. So I'm going to take 3 times 7 would give me 21 here. So now this is going to become y squared minus 4y minus 21. And and I'm going to factor that trinomial. Now it's easier to factor because I don't have this 3 here in the front. And so y squared would be y times y. My last term is negative, and since I don't have any number here to worry about, I can go ahead and make 1 plus and 1 minus. I know since my last term is negative, my sign should be different in here, and I'm going to factor 21. Well, that's either 1 times 21 or 3 times 7. And so I'm looking for the pair that I can subtract, since signs are different, to give me this negative 4y in the middle. And of course that would be my 7 times 3. But I need my higher number negative, so when I subtract I get a negative 4, so I need the 7 here and the 3 here. Now, I cannot put this as my answer because I've got to go back now and account for this 3 that I moved to the end. And so I do that by now dividing each of these end numbers by this 3. Well, if it will divide or reduce, you need to do that. Well, this will divide. 3 divided by 3 is 1, so that's y plus 1. This will not divide and it will not reduce. So this is really the reason why we call this bottoms up. So we think of this as doing bottoms up. We bottoms up this and put the 3 in front of the y minus the 7 on the end. And that is the exact same answer we got above here, doing it guess and check, as we have here doing it bottoms up. So it's your choice which method you want to use. Okay, number 15 is the same type problem. Factor 3y squared minus 4y minus 20. Okay, guess and check method. There's no GCF I can factor out. So start with 3y squared would be 3y times y. Last term is negative. I know my signs are going to be different. I will wait and put them at the end because of this 3. So I factor 20, 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 4 times 5. And so I'm going to start with the 4 and the 5. I don't know if that's going to be what works because of this 3 here, but I'm going to start with that. So if I put a 5 here and a 4 here, then I would have outer times outer, 3y times 5 would be 15y, and inner times inner would be 4y. Is there any way those two would give me negative 4y? And the answer, of course, is no. So I'm going to come underneath here, and I'm going to switch places with the 4 and the 5. So 3y times y is still 3y squared. I'm going to put the 4 here and the 5 here. Well, this time I get 12y and 5y. So once again, 12y and 5y are not going to give me negative 4y that I need in the middle. So I'm going to take that off the list and go up to 10 times 2. So still again, starting with 3y times y gives me 3y squared. And this time I'm trying 10 times 2. So if I put the 2 here and the 10 here, 10 times 2 still gives me this 20. And I do outer times outer, 3y times 2 is 6y. Inner times inner, 10 times y is 10y. And again, we're trying to get these two to give me this middle term, negative 4y. I think I can do it finally, because if I have the 10 negative and the 6 positive, 6y minus 10y will give me negative 4y that I need in the middle. So I need to make sure that I make the 6y positive, so that would be a plus here, and the 10y negative, so a minus sign here, and I have it factored. And of course you can always go back and check your answer with 4. Okay, I'm going to work number 15, that same one, using that bottoms up factoring method. And so if we take 3y squared minus 4y minus 20, and we factor it with using that bottoms up method, I take this 3 in the front and I move it to the end and multiply it. So this becomes y squared minus 4y minus 60. Okay? And so I start my factoring. Y times y is y squared. My last term is negative, so my sign should be different. And so then I'm going to look and think of the ways I can multiply to get 60. 1 times 60, 2 times 30, 3 times 20, 4 times 15, finally 6 times 10, and I stop there because I know, again, our signs are going to be different because the last term is negative, that I can subtract 6 and 10 and get a negative 4y. So I'm going to make the 10 negative because I want the higher number negative and the 6 positive. But don't forget, now we have to take and divide both of these numbers here on the end by this 3 we moved to the end at the beginning. This 3 that was here in the front, we have to divide both of these end numbers by that 3. Well, 6 divided by 3 will divide, so that's really y plus 2. But 10 over 3 will not divide or reduce, so we bottoms up it, and we put this 3 in front of the y. And so I get my final answer, same thing I got here, but just using a different method, y plus 2 times 3y minus 10.